This is the Committee of National Economy, Parliament of Uganda. We welcome you to Parliament. Other members will be joining us, and it's not business as usual, like the President says. It is an abnormal situation. That's why you've seen us scattered. But we welcome you to this meeting. You got our invitation to the fact that we want to get your views on the impact of COVID-19, basically on the economy of Uganda, and specifically, is it affecting your sector? Which both positive and negative attributes. Are you getting positive attributes or negative? Which one outweigh the others? Then we form an opinion to guide the House and the government as well. But we, without going far, want to introduce ourselves. My name is Wamakui Mudemi, a member of Parliament of Elgon County. I've been requested by leadership of this committee to chair this meeting this afternoon. Members for Chair
Anthony Pelo and Picura.
I'm Amos Mandela, member of Parliament of Yamba, Rapa District, member of this committee.
Samati Makita, representing the people of Muslim South.
Kore.
Oh, Judith Aliye, Kole District.
Taking voting.
Marina Baronje, clerk to the committee.
Yeah, on your side.
Lazarus Mugabe, board member, Area Uganda.
Shani Kongai, President, Area Uganda. Victoria Nandozi, Chief Executive Officer, Area Uganda.
Okay. Once again, thanks for coming. We are quite a number, but other members will be joining us who have been having scheduled meetings throughout the morning. Others are just coming, others are signing for plenary. So we want you to give us your presentation, and we should be mindful of time because normally at 5 we have to go because of curfew. I don't know. 4, because yesterday I had on TV they say you prepare earlier. Actually it's supposed to be 3, but if you can give this work 1 hour, then you will deal with the issues. Other members will be introducing themselves as they come. So you are welcome, and we are ready to receive your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. On behalf of the real estate sector, we are happy and grateful for this opportunity to present our views regarding the effects of the lockdown. So I will start by introducing a bit about the association. Our association was established in 2008 by a few private members with the intention to champion the growth and development of the real estate industry. Our membership comprises of real estate agents, real estate managers, real estate developers, landlords, financial institutions, advisors, and the academia. The objectives of the association is basically to promote real estate education in the country, having realized that real estate business is highly informal, so we wanted to professionalize it, to ensure best practices and ethics in the industry. We wanted to carry out advocacy in favor of establishing a regulatory framework that is favorable for the industry. Our objective is also to collaborate with other stakeholders in the industry and to carry out research and development in the industry. We have several programs which include a real estate members database. We organize and host invest conferences annually. We also have a real estate institute, which is the training arm of the association. We provide practical training to real estate practitioners, and we also carry on monthly meetings where we discuss informative issues concerning the real estate sector. So that is just a brief introduction of what EMIA is all about. In order to discuss the issues that have arisen from this lockdown, we wanted to contextualize the discussion. We observed a few issues. We observed that on 21st March, the president, Uganda announced its first case of COVID, and then a few days after, the presidential directive was given on measures to protect the country from the disease. As ERA Uganda, we commend the leadership of the country for the efforts he has made and with the entire team to ensure the safety of Ugandans. Of the measures he took included the partial lockdown, which was announced on 31st March, which saw many Ugandans stay at home for over 60 days. And this came with a lot of impact. It meant that most Ugandans, if you realize that 70% of Ugandans rent residential properties and or even commercial properties. So they were rendered incapable of fulfilling their obligations because they were not working and they could not pay their rent. So the impact was felt in the real estate sector as a whole, although the impact has been felt differently in the commercial side of the real estate sector and the residential side. But in both cases, the issue of payment of rent has been forwarded. But however, we note that there are tenants whose goods and services were classified as essential, who have been continuing with their work as normal, and those ones, I think, should be in position to pay their rent. So what we are saying is that the lockdown did not negatively affect everyone, but there are those who continued to work, and those ones should be in position to pay their rent. But the others who were forced to stay home are not able to pay their rental obligations. So for those ones who would ask for them to be given time, maybe payments should be rescheduled for some months ahead so they may be able to pay their rent. But also we also realize that most landlords have penalties for delayed payment, which we are recommending that those penalties should be removed. So there is always that clause: if you delay paying by a certain date of the month, maybe you pay a 10% penalty or something. So by now those penalties should have accumulated, and that is an issue that is going to be felt by most tenants. We also noted that the real estate sector has largely been operating without regulation, and therefore it is largely informal, and this needs to be rectified. It is also important for the government and the private sector to come up with a mutually inclusive approach to address the challenges that have resulted from the lockdown, aiming at ensuring that investment is encouraged, both in the local and the foreign investment. So with the above context, we came up with, we evaluated, as was requested by, in the letter we received, we went accordingly to the items that were asked. So when we look at the impact of the lockdown on business activity, we noted that since the lockdown was starting, most companies and most businesses were unprepared, and the same applied to the real estate sector. So real estate developments were halted, selling of properties could not take place because the registry and the zonal offices were closed. Property management was affected as agents could not attend to their clients timely. They could not access their clients because they could not transport themselves. And so sometimes even their clients would have to procure maintenance services from other people who maybe gave higher quotations, and so the costs of maintenance also went high. We realized that the real estate sector had been categorized as a non-essential business, and so mostly the businesses could not continue as usual. The developers could not access construction materials, and most businesses reported losses, especially in the commercial real estate. In the residential real estate, there was delayed payment, but since there's still the issue of whether the payment should be waived off or should be rescheduled. But the residential properties remained occupied, but in the commercial properties, most of them were vacant, yet the tenants are supposed to pay their rent. When we look at income and expenditure performance, most sector players were spending with reduced or no income at all because they were not earning. Business had come to a standstill, and so they were not getting income, so they kept depleting what they had. But we should also note that the landlords continued to meet fixed costs of maintenance even during the period of the lockdown. When it comes to supply and demand for labor and remuneration of workers, we realized that most workers still expected to be paid despite the lockdown, when yet the work had reduced. Even when it comes to ongoing projects, development projects had come to a standstill, but the workers who were salaried definitely expected to be paid. And we consider the fact that the legal provision of that leave should be paid. So most of them expected to earn. We also noted that most companies have not paid their workers for the lockdown period, and some have laid off staff or negotiated for reduced payments or half payments. The workers who are engaged on contract basis were rendered redundant as the projects or businesses had reduced. So income for workers generally reduced. When you look at access to raw material, the production of local construction material has been below capacity. This is because of the lockdown. We realized that most transportation was an issue, and most workers were working in shifts, and so the production was below. And that has led to long queues at the moment when after the partial lifting of the lockdown, most developers are queuing to get limited material, which is frustrating. And then that leads to long periods of delivery of orders. And access has also been a challenge because of the ban on transport, both private and public. And the raw materials for construction are not procured only locally. Some are imported. There are some which cannot be found locally. I gave examples there. And so because the airport and the borders are closed, most of these materials cannot be obtained, and that has meant delayed completion of development or projects. When you look at demand for goods and services, the demand for rent, for properties for rent and for sale has both gone down because of the skepticism associated with the lockdown, and also the depleted cash flows among the population. The unwillingness, speculation and willingness of people to invest has pushed the demand down. It should be noted also that the land registry and the zonal offices have been closed, and therefore transactions have dropped because most people would want to transact to search before they make purchases, and immediately after that they want to do the transfers and all that, which they could not make because of the closure of the offices. And then because of the ban of transport, viewing or visiting properties by the prospective buyers will also become a challenge. The closure of the airport and borders meant that the inflow of expatriates, who usually boost the real estate rental and sales market, was significantly reduced. Remember, most of the expatriates rent properties, especially the high-end properties, and so the rentals and sales of those properties are reduced because of that. There is also a lot of sign-out from tenants, especially in commercial premises, because of the diminishing funds or low income or depleted funds due to the lockdown. Most companies have been downsizing, people have lost their jobs, and so they are not able to afford to rent or to do projects, and so the business went down. Some of the property managers have had to refund monies for clients who had booked ahead, because maybe clients decided that they didn't need to have that big space or didn't need to have that space, so they opted to cancel contracts. So that has been a loss to the landlords and property managers. We also noted that there are various centers of authority when it comes to land acquisition. The LCs, the police, the RDCs, the registry, the ministry, and there have been conflicting information when it comes to procedures for transactions of property. When people purchase, then other authorities come and frustrate the transactions during the lockdown, and so that created a lot of property wrangles. We heard about evictions which were halted but sanctioned by other authorities, which created a lot of conflict, and this escalated during the lockdown period. When you look at the prices of goods and services, the prices of raw materials for construction more or less remained the same, but the production was still below capacity, and manufacturers are slowly returning from the lockdown. The supply for housing and commercial property remains almost the same, with a few interruptions on the ongoing projects that were taking place because of the lockdown. Projects had to be halted, so maybe the supply that was going should have been the houses or properties that should have been ready for the 3 months were delayed, but the supply remains. The aggregate demand slowed down due to the strains on income and speculation. There is loss of jobs in the population as various companies decided to downsize, and that comes with changes in priorities of clients when it comes to space for rent and the type of houses they are going to rent or to buy. So the priorities are changing, but still the demand is there. Also the fact that most tenants have not been able to meet their rental obligation, and so they are unable to clear their rent dues as they accumulate. Some of them may opt out or may opt to leave the premises, and so there will be a few more vacant premises. As a result, banks have been skeptical to lend money, and therefore disrupting the confidence that the financial institutions had built in the real estate sector, considering that most banks at the moment had rolled out mortgage facilities. Sorry, I skipped that. Okay, when you talk about availability of credit, we should, like I had mentioned before, 70% of the population are in rentals. They rent their property, or they rent the places they they reside, and they also rent their offices, as opposed to ownership. But due to the poor performance of the sector as a result of the reduced non-payment of rent, most property owners have been unable to meet their loan obligations during the lockdown, especially for the past 3 months. And they have been negotiating with the banks to reduce, to reschedule the loan payment. We noted that although the banks have agreed to reschedule the payments and they have given the landlords more time to pay their obligations, we noted that actually the interest increased, and so their debt obligation has instead increased and worsened as opposed to remaining the same. So the banks increase the time, maybe they give you 3 more months to pay, but they also charge more interest in the payment. So that has affected the landlord. And also we noted that banks at the moment are skeptical to lend money because of they are not confident that the borrowers will be able to pay off their loans, and so this has disrupted the confidence that the banks had continuously built in the real estate. We can note that just before the lockdown, most banks had now rolled out mortgage facilities for the real estate sector, but as opposed to a few years back when we only had one bank that was had mortgage facilities. But now most banks had rolled out and have gained confidence in the real estate sector, but with the lockdown, the confidence has reduced and they are skeptical to lend money. When it comes to financial liquidity, position, servicing of debt, and tax obligation, since most practitioners or most businesses recorded low performance due to the partial lockdown, this has resulted in loss of income. Their finances have been depleted because they were mostly spending and not earning, and therefore they have been unable to meet their obligations, their tax obligations, their loan obligations, others were maintenance obligations. So what are the strategies that we are proposing as the real estate sector? We propose that the real estate business sector needs support from the government in able to increase liquidity for the sector to access credit and reduce operational costs by taking the following measures. We request that the government should pay up all domestic arrears and outstanding VAT refunds, which should be done immediately to the sector players and to the broader economy, because if the payment is done for the broader economy, then the cash flow increases in the economy and that will increase business in the real estate sector. Government, through the Bank of Uganda, should ensure that commercial banks reduce interest rates, both for the dollar and the shilling as proposed, 6.5% for the dollar, below 12% for the Uganda shilling. We are also proposing that the government reduces electricity prices by 30% from April 2020 to September. We are also proposing deferment of statutory payments required of the developers for 6 months, 6 to 12 months, and the deferment should be interest-free. We are also proposing a reduction in the corporate tax from 30% to 20% for the next 2 years. This will incentivize investment for both foreign direct investment and local investment. There should be an investment allowance reinstate the investment allowance for the next 4 years at least. Lower taxes on products produced locally or with locally sourced raw materials, so that would reduce the price of the finished properties. We are also proposing that VAT rate should be reduced from 18% to 14% for 2020-2021. All this, we are saying, it will help us improve the liquidity in the sector. Many developers have got loans from banks with interests up to above 25%. Our request is that government through Bank of Uganda helps to restructure their loan payment, giving them a grace period of 6 months without interest. We are also asking that given the lockdown and no business, government should freeze tax on rental properties for at least 6 months with effect from April 2020, and should not increase taxes on rental properties. We are also asking for lower taxation on locally manufactured materials and remove VAT on sale of houses for the same period. Medium term, we are asking the government to give sovereign guarantees, provide financial guarantees so that we may secure and increase private sector investment in the real estate, and attract joint venture partnerships from both foreign investment and local investment. In the long term, we are requesting the government to enact the NSSF Amendment Bill to increase the supply of long-term affordable financing to the real estate business. We are also asking that the real estate sector be regulated, that the government establishes a regulator for the real estate to eliminate haphazard mixed development slums, coordinate and control sector players for effective planning, zoning, designs and approval, supervision and implementation. As I had mentioned earlier, that the real estate sector is highly informal and unregulated. So in the long term, to increase and to revive the sector, we need the regulation in place. The future expectations for the real estate business in the event containment persists, we expect that businesses will be closed by some of the real estate players. Majority of the players will be out of business. There will be loss of income for government in form of taxes, since there will be no tenants and no tenants to occupy properties, and maybe even more properties will not be developed. And remember that we have a deficit of housing. We also expect that employment will increase. Unemployment. Our proposal to revive the economy, like the proposals I have mentioned above, the ones that get the medium, short and long term. Then I would also add that the government should adequately capitalize the Uganda Development Bank and revive the mandate of Housing Financing Bank as a construction bank with a dedicated fund to provide affordable capital for real estate development. We also recommend or propose enhancement of technology and knowledge transfer to Ugandans to the sector. We also recommend the regulation that I have talked about. We finance and accelerate training programs that build skills of all construction works. As I said, our construction is highly informal. Most of the people involved in the real estate sector are unskilled, and so we ask the government to finance and accelerate training. We are also asking government to freeze taxes on rental properties for the 6 months. I think that one has stood. And that government should not increase taxes on rental properties. We are also asking the government to establish a special credit facility to enable recovery of SMEs in the real estate sector and other sectors, because the recovery of the whole economy will boost the real estate sector as well. Government should intervene by, I think that one I've mentioned. We encourage landlords or property owners to engage their tenants in negotiations to reschedule payments of rent from the period of the lockdown for 6 months. This should apply to both commercial and residential properties. So we are saying landlords should negotiate with their tenants. We are also proposing that the known procedures of land acquisition should be followed by all government agencies, so they should all speak the same language and not one speaking this and the other one speaking a different language. In conclusion, we welcome the measures that have been taken by government to prevent the spread of the coronavirus and hence saving the lives of the Ugandans. And we ask the government to further explore the above incentives to boost the sector as discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam, for the presentation. Honourable members who have joined us, this is an association of real estate agents in Uganda. They have made their presentation, but before we go into a discussion, those who have joined us, honourable members can introduce yourselves. Those who have joined us later, and we will be somewhere.
Chair Mugandero Party Papa, Member of Parliament of Mayans, the member of the committee.
Thank you. Welcome. Ben Adatik is my name, member of this committee. I represent the people of Waibu County from Arua.
Next.
I'm Jimmy Akela, member of Parliament from the municipality.
I'm Najanga Andrew Aja, member of Parliament Kabale municipality and a member of this committee.
Okay, these are members. There are others who are coming, but there is also plenary going on. We are like 30, not enough.
Others also came here.
Oh, you are honorable.
My name is Herbert Edmund Ariko, member of Parliament municipality, member of this committee. You're most welcome.
Okay, members, you've heard from our guests about the impact of COVID on their business. So I welcome these suggestions, ideas, and questions to them. But before that, I want to know the coverage. This association, which coverage do you have? Are you only based in Kampala or you spread throughout the country? Because whenever we move, we find another point where real estate. So I want first to know your coverage. Then number two, you've made good proposals. Now there is one of domestic areas where you said government, if they pay domestic areas, then people will be able to. Can you illustrate to us how domestic areas, because this is tagged to few individuals, not all. And largely people who are affected, these are low income, and they may not be having domestic areas, safe maybe tax areas. How will this help them to clear it? Now, yesterday but one, we met a team from Kasita. You talked about negotiating with the property owners, but according to Kasita, they have served them already. that they should clear or vacate. Actually, they were not even allowing them even to open, and you check whether stock is there or say before you open, please pay. How is that going to synchronize with your presentation? Or as an association, I will also take an initiative to meet these arcade owners in town to see how to mitigate the effect. Another one, Parliament has been advocating for charging of rent in foreign currency, especially dollars. Most of these people, then Ugandans, they charge rent in dollars, and it is creating scarcity of the dollars in the market. And once the dollars are scarce, the price will go up. And once the rate goes up, government normally comes in to intervene through Bank of Uganda to inject money. And that's the loss. Why really? This is an economy. Why they charge rent? Why can they charge in Uganda shillings? Why they prefer in dollars? Members, you can add on.
Honorable Chair.
Yes, Honorable Sematimba.
Thank you very much. I want to take this opportunity to appreciate Mrs. Kongai for the presentation. The purpose of this meeting and getting together to find out what the effects of COVID have been to your industry, the main reason is we as government and Parliament playing its part are looking to understand the severity of the consequences of COVID so that we can come up with appropriate solutions. Of course, COVID has had a negative impact on just about every industry. But it would have been very nice if the negative effects of COVID on your industry would have been given to us either quantitatively or percentage-wise. That way the severity of the problem is better understood and solutions are easier to come up with. So perhaps maybe in your final report to us, your written report, you might be able to translate some of that information into either percentages or quantitative or something like that, something that data we can use to therefore define a solution. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Contribution? Yes, Honorable Uganda.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, you asked for the coverage of this specific association. My interest would be the membership, if alone the coverage. I would like to know who qualifies to be a member of this association. We have, for example, article here, we have some 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe properties somewhere, different parts of the country. And to him, these may not be the issues. So who are these people who sit and make such a report? Then to Chair, I did move around Kampala because it has been easy to move around Kampala during COVID, even on food. And I saw a peak in construction, because in some roads, building materials were even being poured in the roads, because everyone was trying to use this specific period to construct. That's for the case of Kampala. What is the case in other areas? Because if we are taking a picture, Kampala, and you saw some even building without building, plans, so that by the time end of COVID, the building is already up and some actually collapsing. Is that happening because there is pressure That is so. What is that? That is actually pushing this increase in construction in Kampala and maybe other areas, as opposed to the issues set in here. Those are my and the other is, well, government is one of the clients of real estate with associations and so on, because government also rents. Do we know how much government, maybe the demand or the areas that the government owes real estate associations in terms of rent, the different properties? Thank you.
Correct. No, members answer you. So yes, good honorable Judith.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. I want to thank the representative for real estate. I used to think that this was not a well-established entity, but according to what I've heard, the real estate sector has come up fully to help Ugandans and other people who would like to acquire properties. Honorable Chair, as I look at this report, these people are asking for regulations. Actually, we need a regulatory framework that would really govern the management for real estate. I've ever seen so many people engaging in real estate, and you find anybody now pretending to be a real estate manager. So many people have come up, and so many people have come to us to buy such properties, but they're just supposed to be coming from real estate sector, which may not be true. So if this sector is not regulated, then we don't know. People who are doing a lot of forgeries here and there are so many in the sector. We don't know them, but they come as brokers, they come as, telling us so many lies here and there, but anyway, connecting us to some properties. Now, if they're well established, I think they will go a long way to attract a lot of revenues that this country will really have in the near future. I also want to ask the real estate sector about foreigners acquiring properties, because sometimes they link so many people, including non-citizens. And what does the law say about somebody who is a non-citizen and acquiring properties in Uganda here? Because I've ever seen so many people who are non-citizens, like the Indians, the Chinese, and many other people who come as investors in this country. When they want to acquire land, they go to real estate, they go to these people who connect them to acquire this property. So how do you handle that? Because sometimes you need to report, because it may be against the law that these people are not supposed to acquire properties in Uganda here if they are non-citizens. But you find it already happening. And they're already owning land, owning houses when they're not supposed to do so. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Yeah, to add on, you find them acquiring freehold titles. And even recently, where I live, my neighbor wanted to dispose of his property. So the first priority was he wanted to be the neighbor. But some other agents were saying, no, let us get the Lithia and will give us good money. And it has been taken by Lithia. Honorable colleague here recently saw this property in Lithia, not the Ugandan. So you can't even compare. They are going to give us good money. You know, Mandela, the group. That is not for another meeting. All right, remember. Yes, whatever.
I think know that someone can be reading from the same script. Because most of what I wanted to ask, she has asked. So I don't know how you read from my script.
are sitting there.
So, I don't know how the wave came to. But to add on something that she was talking about, I want to know how best you as a real estate agency, how best can we get rid of the crooks? The crooks that come in to sell land 2 times, 3 times, even times 5 times. You go, you buy land, and we need also you people to advise us on how best we get to the Ministry of Lands and show us that there is no encumbrance on the land, and yet indeed it's not there. You know, at times you find they are saying there is no encumbrance on the land. The owner of the land is that very person, yet when you go to buy, you find you are number 4 to buy. So I want to understand how your association can get in. Number 2, you can also advise Parliament on how best we can either create a law, but to make sure that the real estate management, that you see this so-called brokerage is a consultancy. It's a consultancy, it's true consultancy. But they have spoiled the name of real estate agency in the name of being brokers who are crooks, who are robbers actually. So how best can you work hard to make sure your name is not tainted to that, so that indeed the consultancy is real, to move in a line of what the good people want as government? That's the most important thing, so that we have the trust that this association should be well established, well looked after, and moving at par with the government laws. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm coming late, but real estate sector is one area where I'm well versed, but I have very few questions or issues which I want the President to clarify. One is not really as questions, but I expected it to come from her presentation. It's in regard to the basis on which they have come up with some of these proposals. We all know the COVID is a global pandemic, and by now we should be having data on measures being taken by different economies to be able to, mitigate the dire effects in short term, medium term, and long term. Your document seems not to be giving us that comparative information, because whatever we're doing, we should be able to compare notes with what is happening globally, if not with our immediate neighbors, so that the steps that we are going to take, because for all the economies to emerge out of the economic effects of the COVID, it is going to take a global trend. So Ugandan economy cannot bounce back alone. You have to anchor on what your neighbor is doing or what is being done globally. So I thought your document needed to give us that information. If it's not, if it has not been skipped. Secondly, on the issue of reduction on tax rates, both the corporate, the VAT, the issues to do with the interest, yes, that can be understandable. But we all know the sources of revenue for government is taxes. Now we need to know the impact of these tax reductions, because I'm very sure some of the measures that government is going to have to implement will involve resources. Because I know the real estate actually thrives on the welfare of other economic activities. people should be able to generate resources to be able to get into the real estate business. But if the government does not have the resources to be able to kickstart or to keep alive some of these other economic activities, then you will not expect the real estate industry to bounce back. So my expectation was that you would actually advocate for maintenance of tax rates so that, you know, the full cycle of economic activities is lubricated to be able to give you that disposable income with people to be able to spend. Last but not least, your presentation does not mention the clients of the real estate business. We have seen on media how the tenants have been crying for relief from rent for a period, the period for which not only for the period of the lockdown, but also beyond the lockdown. Because yes, you might go ahead to evict the tenants, or the tenants might end up being evicted, but in the end, who will occupy those malls? Who will occupy those estates if they get evicted? So I thought, as the people in this business, you'll also offer direction on how the landlords would be able to help the tenants as we maneuver this COVID-19 period. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank the team for their submission, and I think this is my second time I interface with you about real estate. Probably it has come at a time when one of our colleagues has been granted leave to come up with a bill on the real estate.